On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we're chatting with our friend Ted Love again.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Joel, welcome back.
Hi, Andy. It's good to have you back as well.
We like just did this, didn't we?
We did. We're, again, not to pat ourselves on the back too hard, but we're consistent. We're just knocking it away.
We got vacation again, and we wanted to bring you more consistent.
That's right.
Shows. So
thanks for getting on the stick, Andy. Let's just be clear. It's really you keeping this train on the tracks. But Andy, we are back. We are super excited about tonight's episode where we get to have someone back on the show. It's a small group of dedicated Dudes and Dads podcast alumni that we've had back on here. But Ted Love is back on with us this evening. Because if you're Dudes and Dads podcast fans, you will remember from season one, episode 10, when Ted came on the first time, and Andy,
he was one of our first beginning guests. And his episode is the all-time high-performing episode on the Dudes and Dads podcast, top download number, and the podcast, that episode has been Wow. Sound effects and everything. Yes.
It's better than the cricket sound effect,
yes.
I suppose, which would be awkward if I made that announcement and then it was crickets. We had Ted on previously, and we'll do a little bit of the recap, but Ted had been on a long time journey looking for his biological father, and then lo and behold, as they say, he found him. And
that's where we chatted with him last.
Yes, we chatted with him last.
Right after he found him, just met him.
Yeah. And then some things have happened. And then some things have happened in the meantime. And we're like, we should do round 2. We need to get updated on the story. But we should tell you guys. Ted, sometimes we do a little bit longer pre-show, where we kind of catch each other up and we talk through kind of the talking points of the show. We have not done that this time because Ted desires to take us.
He wants us to hear it when you guys hear it.
So we're going to be experiencing Ted's story version, the second round.
With you.
Yeah. Oh, boy. So the facial reactions are all natural and completely live and real. But, oh my goodness. So, Ted, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness gracious. So Ted's going to, so here's where we're going to start, Ted. You shared with us last time the process of meeting your dad, and you were not very far out from that experience when you had recorded with us, but obviously a lot has happened since then. So give us the super short, just to help maybe listeners that have not heard before, give us the super short version of how you came into contact with your dad, and then take us on, update us on what has happened since that connection has been made.
Okay. For those that may not have heard the first podcast, I will say that I did 3 different genetic studies. Throughout those studies, I learned different things from each one of them. The first one I did was 23andMe. The second was Family Tree DNA. And the third was Ancestry.com. By the time we got to Ancestry.com, my wife had figured out how to do descending genealogy. And in short, what that means is instead of going from one individual to their parents to their grandparents, you find a 3rd, 4th, or 5th cousin, and you may have 4 or 5 different sets of great-great-grandparents you're looking at, each one representing a different cousin group.
Okay, yep.
And then you're looking for a common ancestor between these cousin groups, which would explain basically you're using your great-great-grandparent connection to find your parent.
Gotcha.
And that's what we did.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, that sounds a lot easier than it's done. it's countless hours of genealogy and understanding of how to use software like Ancestry.com and really knowing what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. So you got some pings on Ancestry.com. There was like, aha, something's happening here. And you found your biological father and you met him and your kids met him and you've done stuff together.
We have.
And you've traveled places now. And
We have. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah. What?
First of all, let me just tell you, when I was getting out of the truck to meet him for the very first time, I had this almost out-of-body experience where I can't remember where Ann was.
Sure.
I knew she was sitting in the passenger side of the truck, but I don't remember her really getting out. I remember like a slow motion of getting out of the truck, and it felt like time was really slowing down. And I didn't know whether I was going to shake his hand or hug him.
Right.
And I think I did both.
Yeah.
And it was very, honestly, I'm an easy guy. But you know what? One of the things that I have loved over this last year is I realized that my dad's funny.
Yeah.
And I this whole nature versus nurture, I'm like a walking experiment when I'm with him.
Yeah.
We walk alike.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a sense of humor that's similar.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a jolly guy.
Yep.
I'll pick on him a little bit since I love him and he knows that. I've asked him about his tattoos.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, at that time in his life, he didn't have a really good tattoo artist.
Okay.
So one of his tattoos is, it's on his forearm and it's kind of green and it has an eagle head sticking out of it. But you know what? I want you to know officially, Dad, I love you and I love that tattoo because it's on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, my dad is great. He has a sense of humor. I love it that I know my aunts and my uncle. I have an Aunt Reva. I have an Uncle Eddie and an Uncle Dick and my dad and my Aunt Kathy and my grandmother. God bless her. She's 6 years old. Joel, you know how I love old people.
Yes,
and
yeah.
she's so sweet.
Yeah.
She's like, in some ways, she's a lot like our daughter,
Mhm.
Emily.
Yeah.
She's just older.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, you not only found your dad, but you found a whole slew of people that you didn't know about before. That's really cool that you've got to connect with them, over the last year, and meet them.
I found a whole branch.
Yeah. Wow. So last time we talked, I mean, the search for your father, I mean, it had been years and years long. I mean, how long had you kind of been intentionally looking?
I started looking when I was 13.
Yeah. So,
And I think that if I had to put some sort of a psychological twist on it, I know that young men get those hormones and it changes us.
mm-hmm.
And I think I needed answers.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably hormone driven, but I wanted to know who I was and where I came from and the things I was told, and the math didn't add up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're in any way, I mean, because our identity is so connected to our family in one way or another. Do you feel like a different person now than a year ago or like before you met your dad? Like, is there a different Ted Love because of this? Like, are new pieces coming in, or was it, I know who I am and this is icing on the cake sort of thing? Do you feel like there's been some flexibility in that, or how have you experienced that?
I can tell you that somebody asked me, well, what now?
Mm-hmm.
You've been looking and looking and looking. Now that you found it, what now? Where's all that energy going to go?
Yeah.
and I'm not the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not. I haven't wasted 1 ounce of emotional energy thinking about who my dad is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can say that with a big smile on my face.
Right.
And when people have heard the story, people are really happy. But I think really what they're happy about is he loves me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love him.
Yeah.
This guy didn't know he had a child.
Yeah.
And he also was never told. And so I don't want to be mournful because I know he hasn't said it directly to me, but we've had conversations enough for me to know that, if we think about it, it's sad to think that I never knew him
Mm-hmm.
and he never knew me.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you, I would be ripping on the guitar right now
Yeah.
if we would have met earlier in
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
But that's part of the joy too, is getting to know what a guitarist he is and how he loves music. And you would not believe the gospel the man can do.
Mm-hmm.
I have his CD, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I would like to think before I get too old or he gets too old to do this, I'd really like to be able to play with him sometime.
Yeah.
And I would love to sing a song with him, a gospel song. But I'm not sure I could get through it without tears.
Yeah.
It's like I turn into an emotional mush bucket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, because there's so much in that, right? It's beyond even the message of the song. It's you connecting in that special way. So how often are y'all seeing each other these days?
Despite COVID, he's come to our house and we've gone there, and we're going to Ben's wedding this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to do as much as we can. He doesn't take very many precautions for a 76-year-old guy, and my grandma at 96, she's going out and getting. It's a different county, but we're taking precautions in our family.
Right. Yeah.
But we try to see each other, and we talk to each other weekly.
Yep. Are you still learning stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a story that I'll probably put in the book. We're writing a book about this search that we went on. We have about 30,000 words written, and we spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on a Saturday on it together. There's a story that he told me coming back from Nashville, and it's a story that he only partially he gave me part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And on a visit during the summer, he told me another piece of the story. And I'm not sure on radio, on the podcast, I'm going to tell that.
Sure. But there are things though.
Things you're learning.
But I did tell him that I would put it in the book.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to be very sensitive about how I write it.
Yeah.
With Ann.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you're on this journey with your father. Big, you've met all these other family members now. This is, and you're like, wow, what more could happen? But then something new comes along.
Mm-hmm.
A new revelation, a new discovery. Tell us about it.
Okay. I woke up and Ann said, I want you to get some coffee. And then I want you to come and sit on the couch with me.
That's never a good way to wake up, because you're just like, what's going on?
I need you to get some coffee.
Yeah.
I had a flashback when my mother said, I want you to go to the couch. I have something to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching that black coffee drip.
Mm-hmm.
No more words have been said, and no explaining has been done to explain this. You need some coffee. You have a close match on Ancestry.com. So as that black coffee's dripping in my head, I'm thinking, you're going to be a daddy.
Oh, geez.
And I thought, well, that's okay. If that's the case, that apple fell real close to the tree.
Sure. Yep.
I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, boy, that's fair, finding your dad when he's 76. I'm 55. I thought, this is fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to the couch with a cup of coffee, and we looked at the results, and it was a boy, but it was my brother.
Yes. Yes.
So my brother is 51 years old, and 53 years old. And I met my brother. I saw it. I knew what the results were when we looked at it. There were a few things we had to investigate, but we had comparable data that we looked at with other half siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And centimorgans is a genetic term that you use when comparing relationships, and the range is about 15,000 to, I think, almost 18,000 centimorgans, and his was over 17,000. One of my half brothers, Don, I think he's close to 16,000 centimorgans. So, and Don was the lower one of the four of us,
mm-hmm.
And so 17,000 was fairly convincing.
Yeah,
he's a half brother.
Yeah.
The strange aspect of this was, it was hard. I never saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. My mother tried to let go of things before she died, and it took such courage for her to try to let out something she had kept in her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote diaries. So I read the last 5 years of diaries when she died.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across a couple of things, but, it was cryptic. Sometimes something almost literal doesn't really come out of the page until you have a context to read it in. And she said at one point she had 5 children. We knew she had a miscarriage, and there seemed to be a reference in the family about a girl. And I asked all my living aunts and uncles, and they said, yes, we knew she gave a girl up for adoption.
Wow.
And none of them told us.
Wow.
So what really struck me as odd was when we found Tammy. Actually, she found us. That was 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Tammy's adopted mother gave her our mother's name, and she also gave her daughter my mom's first husband's name, which is actually on her birth certificate.
Oh, okay.
That's a story by itself, but here this he was a good man, and there are 2 crying women with a baby in the room, and this baby wants to be adopted, and the mom wants to, well, I don't know if the baby wanted to be adopted, but
Right.
the mothers both wanted this to happen. And yet, for it to be legal, there had to be a father that signed off. And back then, he knew he wasn't the father, but he said no, and then he reconsidered and said yes, and he signed the adoption. And Tammy doesn't know who her biological father is, but she does know the story of who signed it.
Interesting.
And he knew.
Yeah.
So he knew, and all my aunts and uncles knew, and my brothers and I did not know. But we thought, after we found Tammy, we thought that was it.
Yep.
And we thought the miscarriage was the 5th one.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay, I love you, man. Welcome to the family.
Yeah.
Jay's a great guy. His name's Jay Cook, and he's my brother.
So was Jay looking too?
Jay took the Ancestry.com in January, and because of COVID, the results came back later than they normally would have.
Gotcha.
And Jay found out, I believe, on a Friday night, and Saturday morning we exchanged. Saturday morning, Ann and I looked at the results. Saturday afternoon, Jay and I were on the phone, and by that by the end of that conversation, we made arrangements to meet on Sunday.
Wow. Wow.
So within 48 hours of his opening that, he knew.
He knew. Wow, that's got to be a lot for him to take in, too. Have you guys discussed that at all as far as him? He had no idea that he had a half-brother either, and I'm assuming, right, he didn't know anything about you? Or
this is going to get good.
Yes.
Sure, we love it.
Jay and I went to high school together.
No.
No. Oh, man.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
And we were on the swim team together.
No.
Oh, man.
So,
Okay. Wow.
okay. Okay.
Now, I have no idea how to say what went through Jay's mind. Well, it was a lot for him to take in on a lot of different levels. I had at least a sister to practice on. This wasn't my first go around with this.
Right.
But I think we both handled it well. In some ways, it was very kind of fun and exciting. Jay's friend group on Facebook and my friend group on Facebook from high school, it crosses over.
Mm-hmm.
And so my Facebook blew up, his blew up. It's strange to think that we lived on the same road.
Wow.
On opposite ends of Howard County. So Kokomo, this is a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is somebody tell me another story about adoption where a mother has children, gives one up for adoption, keeps one, and gives another one up for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
When my sister, Tammy, when Tammy told me that her mother was given an opportunity to adopt me, I didn't really know what to think of that.
Mm.
In some ways, it kind of hurt me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like it was like a stab wound of, my mom tried to give me up for adoption. Didn't she love me?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a strange thing to think about because she raised me and she loved me.
Yep.
But Tammy's mom couldn't adopt me.
Mm-hmm.
They had adopted another child, another girl, and so they told my mom no. But in reality, it's such a blessing because my mom had an opportunity to raise me. I think she kind of felt stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
She married Clayton Love not long after she knew she was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't know when her relationship ended with my dad, Bobby. We don't know for sure, 100% sure, if she knew she was pregnant when she told him she wanted to get married, because he never found out.
Mm-hmm.
She never told him. She may have known before he left. She told him to leave, and she may not have. She may have found out later. But I do know that when she did find out that she was pregnant with me, she tried to give me up to Tammy's mother. And when that didn't work out, she was married within 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, my birth certificate actually says Clayton T. Love. And my name is Clayton T. Love, the second, which is so strange.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dad. I'm gonna work your last name. My dad's name is Bobby Clemens, and I'm gonna work Clemens into my name somehow. I haven't figured out how or when I'm going to do it, but you will have representation, Dad.
Yeah, an heir.
Yeah. What's interesting is I had a wonderful stepdad, and I named my son after my stepdad that raised me.
Yep.
And so in some ways, my story honors my stepdad that was a dad. But I feel like my dad needs that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I had another son, I would name him Bobby.
Yeah.
maybe a grandson.
No pressure, kids.
No pressure.
Yeah. Okay, so your mom's relationship with, I'm trying to keep track here. Mom's relationship ends with your stepfather, and then this is how does your brother come into the picture here? What happens?
Well, here's the deal. My mother was married to a man named Ron Harper. Wonderful man and a dad to me.
Mm-hmm.
I called him dad until I was 5. Ron was a super nice guy. I stopped calling Ron dad when I was 7. That's when my mom married my stepdad, Cal. Cal was an absolute gem.
Mm-hmm.
He was so good to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cal raising me on, those, emotional times in life when you round third base and you knock the catcher over and he's as proud as, any dad could be of a son.
Yep.
That's a story
Mm-hmm.
that Cal and I would oftentimes go back to and remember. He knew I was going to knock this catcher out the second I rounded third base. And, it was in a different era when you could do those kind of things.
That's when baseball, actually it was baseball. Anyway.
So I did this Pete Rose right into this guy, and he knocked the ball out of the mitt, and I scored. And my Cal was very proud.
Mm-hmm.
So, the relationships those relationships are sacred to me because my mom's first husband was a good dad to me. My mom's last husband was good to me, and he raised me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I found my real dad, and he's good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the man on my birth certificate by family history was not good to my mom and was not good to my brothers. But my mom was also married to a man before that was not good to her and was not good to my brothers. Now, where does Jay come into this? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my mom had 2 children with the same man. She had a child with an unknown man, which is Tammy's father. And she had me, and for 40 years, an unknown father.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had Jay, and we don't know who Jay's father is.
Okay.
Now, I will say this. I do know that my mom arranged the first adoption. The second adoption with Jay, that was done officially the way it should be done, through a social worker.
Okay.
So I think Jay wants to know his father, who that person is, and he's taken some steps to do that. It's going to take some time, but hopefully it won't take 40 years like it took me.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you foresee yourself kind of walking next to Jay through this season for him? I mean, because it's an interesting connection, the two. I mean, you're half brothers, but you have different fathers. But I'm sure you have this sense of like, I know what you're going. I know what you're going through, dude. Yeah.
Well, if I could give a gift to Jay, it would be that, I remember with my stepdad, when I told him I was looking for my biological father, he was quiet. And as a man that does what he does not have to do,
Mm-hmm.
when you are a man that marries a woman that already has children and you step up to the plate and you are the dad, when you act like a man and you present yourself in a loving way and you care for that child until they're an adult, what a gift.
Right.
So I never wanted to hurt my stepdad's feelings. But he knew I needed to look. He knew I needed to search. And when I was 7, he offered to adopt me. And as a 7-year-old, I told him no because I wanted the last name Love. I mean, who doesn't love that?
Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
Sorry, Dad, Bobby. Clemens is good too. But somehow Love, I think, I connected Love, even as a 7-year-old, as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everybody else had a different name than me, so why wasn't my name as good as anybody else's name?
Yeah.
So it's hard to believe I was opinionated as a 7-year-old.
Right. And that's a lot to take in and process as a 7-year-old. Yeah.
So
yeah. let me just say, if I could give a gift to Jay, it would be that he could walk down that road and somehow not have to experience anything negative. He loves his dad. I know his dad loves him. I would just say that that's just something special, and that's between Jay and his dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel like you're getting good at this now? Like what does one do in that initial conversation of like when you have found each other? I mean, did it feel more? Did your first conversation with Jay? Do you think it felt more natural to you than it did to him?
I know it was easy for me. I'm not sure I could speak for Jay.
Mm-hmm.
I think something was strangely odd about our conversations with each other because we had the same friends.
Yeah,
right,
that is
weird.
an extra. Yeah. That's an extra layer of weird.
And so we knew each other not well.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't run in the same circles all the time because I was older than he was.
Right.
How far apart are you guys?
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's really strange is I was a fairly decent football player, and Jay would have been at the football games on Friday night with our mother and his adopted parents, his parents that adopted him. So his parents would have been there. My mom and stepdad would have been there, and I would have been on the field.
And your mom would have
She had no idea.
She had no idea.
So she didn't know who adopted
So
you.
my mother probably, back then, the way this was done, the nurse probably took the child immediately for like baby care.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay was born. I had the date in my mind. I don't have the date right now. It was 8 days. I believe it was 8 days. So Jay was born, and 8 days later, he had his new family.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I said we lived on the same street. We really did. We grew up on the same road on opposite sides of the county in rural Kokomo.
Yeah. Wow. And you just wonder about. I mean, so really, your childhoods, they overlap, and like the childhood experience was similar for the both of you.
It was. We grew up in an area where it was rural. We went to the same style elementaries on opposite sides of the county, but both of those elementaries fed into the same middle school and the same high school where Jay and I met. We met in high school before we knew any of this, of course. It's so strange to, we can talk about the same swim coach, or we can talk about, Northwestern Tigers.
Well, I know for me, it's like when I get together with my sister and my brother-in-law, we kind of all went to the same high school and stuff. So we always have these same stories that we tell at Christmas. But for you, this is like somebody that you didn't know until now, but you can you can do the same thing. You can still have those same type of stories.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I will just say this. I don't want to get into too many details, but Jay's relatives are very into sports.
Mm-hmm.
And they support sports, and one of the females in that family had a good shot at Miss Basketball in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very well-known family.
Okay.
I'll put a little plug out for the Merrills. Go Merrills. But Ted and Terry Merrill are well-known. One of them Ted graduated after my brother Mike from Northwestern, and Terry Merrill graduated after my brother Don. So the Merrill brothers are uncles to Jay.
Okay.
And so it's Jay has a brother, John, and it's interesting that John gave me a Facebook shout out like a month before I met Jay.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. So so all this that you've gone through now and meeting these family members, and now, I mean, I'm assuming that before with the writing of the book, there was this story with your father,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm assuming there's going to be a chapter or two with you. Are you adding chapters now that Jay has come to light, or?
I will absolutely add that chapter.
Yeah.
It describes, I would say that the only way for me to summarize this is finding Jay is the end of a story about how I understand how my mother was developed.
Mm-hmm.
What makes someone get married 5 times?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of hurt and pain did she experience before she met her first relationship?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that now.
Mm.
She was broken.
Yeah.
And she was not a good mother when we were young.
Mm-hmm.
But she developed, and she changed, and she met a good man. And it brought a stability to her that allowed her to even redevelop her relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many people, Christian people especially, that get twisted up about how broken people are and what people look like and how families don't look traditional. And I would tell people that my mom's best marriage was her last marriage. And she was not able to have a relationship with God when she was younger. One of her first memories was going to church with her sister, and they thought they had to dress up and wear makeup. And of course, good old church people told these 2 little girls that they were whores.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all my mom could remember about church until she was in her 50s. And it was through godly people at Howard Miami Mennonite Church in Kokomo that took me in, and they just loved me like nothing you've ever seen. I have all kinds of father figures in that church. But when my stepdad and my mom saw how Howard Miami loved on me, it made them want to go to church there.
Yeah.
And so my stepdad and my mom developed that relationship, and I witnessed my mom's transformation in Christ. So,
yeah.
You guys want to make me weep, talking about my mom's transformation.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, people do change, and particularly people change when they are shown love.
Yeah,
love really does cover over a multitude of sins. I mean, we can experience that in real time. You've seen that.
I have watched it.
You have watched it happen, and and part of me thinks, Ted, I mean, even the work you do as an educator, I have to believe is deeply influenced by that reality that you have seen. Like, you're not in the business of giving up on people, and that's what I appreciate. Well, that's what I appreciate about your whole family is like God's always looking to write a new story or a next chapter, and I think that's the thing that even in this journey that I've seen, I've just seen that kind of play out. And I just love, I mean, what a story. It's not something that we get to experience every day or hear, but it is, I don't know. It's just, and I just think for our listeners, I know maybe some of you there are things you don't know about your family or you've discovered recently, and yet, God's not done with any of us, not by a long shot. And that's, I think your story and your journey really, really highlights that. But, so you're writing this book with your wife. What's that experience been like for the two of you? Because your wife is an author. Your wife is an author. This is what she does. This is
not her first book.
Yeah, this is not. And did you guys ever see, apart from this experience, would you have ever thought about writing a book together?
No. I think writing a book is like canoeing.
Yeah. Now this I get. And either goes really well or really bad, right?
There's certain roles that I play in writing this book,
mm-hmm.
and Anne has a different role.
Mm-hmm.
Anne patiently listens to stories. I tell a story about an aspect of the journey. We've placed all of what we would call chapters on cue cards. Mm-hmm. And these index cards have dates, times, places, and they're sequenced in order. And sometimes when we go to Marion to see my dad, or we go to Kokomo to see my brother, or we just take a trip, somehow being in the car releases my brain in a way where I can free flow.
Mm-hmm.
And she has the computer,
mm-hmm.
and she's taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that we lost a really good chapter on the way to Kokomo one time.
Oh boy.
But we've recovered from that. There's a rhythm to writing.
Mm-hmm.
You get in the mood, and when you get in the mood, you better do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't worry about the clock.
Yeah.
You just do it. You just go. And we've done that together, and I think we have a pretty good rhythm now where we will stop and we will reference things together, or I'll tell a story and she might correct something that she remembers, or we just kind of experience it together.
Well, what I think is cool is, I mean, she's been part of your journey, for a good chunk of your life. I mean, obviously not when you were 7 and started this journey, but she's been a part of this and helped you, step forward in finding your father. And so it's really cool that she gets to continue this journey and write it down so others can read it too. So I think that's really cool that you guys are doing this together.
Yeah. I don't want to be egotistical about it, but I do think this is a good story. Mm-hmm. So if we can write it in a way where it can be presented, I want it to be something people can find hope in.
Yeah.
And I would love to public speak with this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I throw a shot out there, I mean, we wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for Henry Louis Gates and C.C. Moore. C.C. Moore was the chief genealogist for Henry Louis Gates on his show Finding Your Roots. And I've corresponded with both of those people. And if this book gets written well and we have people look at it and we do the editing and changing of things to make it what it should be, I would love to present it to one of them or both of them to maybe add something to it.
Yeah.
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 And we'll have to have you back on the show once you release the book.
That'll be
your
the third.
Yeah.
That'll be the third time right there. Yeah, and you know, and Ted, gosh, it's an interesting and unexpected club that you are a part of. After our first episode, or after the in first season that Ted recorded with us, 2 weeks later, I'm on the phone with Ted and I go, so Ted, strangely enough, I have an uncle and cousins that I did not know about that we just discovered, and very similar trajectory. Some cousins were found. My grandfather was one of 9 kids, and so there were a lot. I mean, there were a lot of cousins, and they kind of tracked back and a lot of questions, and they figured out. And so I have an uncle and cousins that are up in Grand Rapids, where I'm originally from, that we've found recently, and thanks to COVID, have not been able to connect like we would like to, but that's in the future. But it was this moment of, for me, my grandfather had this relationship before he married my grandmother, just a few years before, and my grandfather never knew that he had. I mean, my grandfather was unaware that this had occurred. And back in the day, which, let me see, this is like about 10 years older than you. So this is happening in the early to mid 50s. You know, young lady gets pregnant, she's sent off to Catholic Charities, and it disappears for a while, kind of thing. And that was the reality. And so, just for our family, like, you think your family, you think what life, how you got to where you are in life, and then one day it's like you're told, oh, by the way, there's a whole other chapter to this. There's a whole these lives that you are strangely connected to. And so I'm watching, I'm connected through Facebook to my uncle that I've met, but then his kids, my cousins, and I'm like, it's a weird, it's not like voyeuristic, but it's like one of these things of like, I'm really just interested in these people's lives and like what's going on with them and what they're, and they live in communities where I grew up in, or, like my cousin and her family live in the Caledonia, Michigan area. Well, my dad had an automotive shop there for years that we would go. So it's kind of like those kind of things, those cross points. And you're just like, you just don't know. You don't know the reality you're living in. You think you know, but you don't know. And
it is a strange thing to find out life-changing information.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And at any moment, all of us could get life-changing information. It may not be that hey, by the way, you've got a brother or a father or an uncle or whatever. That may not be the case, but our lives are just so, like,
you think you know what's going on, and then you
think you know.
I would like to say that faith and science. Science. I love science. I'm a science teacher at heart. Science doesn't lie when it comes to genetics.
Mm-hmm.
And when science is wrong, good science admits that it's wrong and wants to see data.
Yep.
And what's interesting about genetics is there's a truth in it. And if you look at 23andMe, they even go as far as saying mom and pop.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't say Adam and Eve, but they might as well have.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting twist to see genetics that way. But the people that raise us and take care of us and love us, those people are our parents. You know, we call them mom and we call them dad. And those people, like my dad that never had a chance to be a dad, he's my dad now.
Right.
And he was never given that opportunity to be dad.
Yeah.
The biggest gift I have experienced out of this is just nothing but grace. My dad loves me. I love him. And all I can say is I hope that we have many years together yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you... Is there ever a sense for, like, I mean, you can't really make up for lost time. Do you ever feel that tension of, like, how can we overcome the expanse of time that we weren't connected? Or is it like, if you just, it's like one day at a time for you? It's like,
it's one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really mourn not being able to play guitar like he does. Playing the guitar didn't come easy to him when he was young. And so why should it come easy for me?
Yeah,
right.
Yep. That's genetics right there. Yep.
But I will say that it is one day at a time. I enjoyed going to Nashville with him, getting to know that my dad had friends in Nashville that are known people. Charlie Dick. Charlie Dick is Patsy Cline's husband. George Riddle was a songwriter that played guitar and sang with George Jones. People know those names. My dad, if he would have stayed in Nashville, he would have been somebody that somebody recognized who he was. And that's just fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to know some of his journey, but knowing that he's my dad, that's the most important thing that I've ever learned.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
Ted, I got to say, man, thanks again for coming on and sharing. Your ability to share such a personal story, like, I'm really, really grateful for it. And I hope it's an encouragement to, just to other people, whatever, heck, I mean, whether it's genealogy related stuff or not, but to be an explorer, to live a life of exploration and continuing to want to know and all of that, I think is I think it's just it's a really good example to many of us. And I should just say, we are super excited whenever this book comes out, whenever this happens.
Please stop by our show again.
Please stop by the show again. We'll do an official book release party.
Yes.
Oh, we could really, that'd be a thing. And but man, just blessings to you guys as you walk these next steps. Very, very exciting. And glad you can just come and share with us. So, well, Andy,
it's that time again.
Oh, it is that time again.
Now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
All right, so we did this with you one other time, so I'm hopefully going to ask you different questions because I have a tendency to ask the same questions again.
You're going to go to the deep well.
I'm going to
go to the deep well.
You can go first because I got to think of mine. You go first.
I am going to start first. Well, first of all, Ted, do you enjoy any of our area Mexican food around here?
I do.
Okay. What's your go-to Mexican dish these days?
Oh, boy. My go-to Mexican dish would be a chicken that's glazed with this really unhealthy cheese. It's served with refried beans and your typical, your lettuce and that kind of thing. But I always put a lot of cilantro on it.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So you've had a super busy week. It's Friday. You come home. What's your favorite thing to do to relax?
Oh, I am enjoying my kayak right now.
Oh,
nice.
yes.
If I can't do it on Friday night when I come home, but I can get it ready for Saturday morning.
So it's the preparation that helps calm you down Friday, and then Saturday you got the kayak.
He's back on the
Great.
water.
Fishing in the kayak.
Nice.
Okay. Well, the fishing thing got me interested. What's your best catch here recently?
My best catch recently. Well, two things. Last Saturday, I caught some bluegills. And prior to that, I floated down the Pigeon River with John Kaufman, and John and I caught some smallmouth and some rock bass.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Oh man, I can't think of anything right now. Joel, if you've got another one, go for it.
Let's see. We're gonna ask you. Okay. In this, so this will tie back into what's been the most your most favorite chapter of this book that you've been writing. Like, what did it come early, or is it like a later development? You can give us just a little teaser, like if you were to say, like in one sentence, what the favorite chapter has been about so far. What would it be?
Honestly, I haven't written it yet.
Okay. So you know what it is, but
I know what it is.
But it's in the tank.
I'll give you a little teaser about it. When I start writing about meeting my dad, that's where we're at in the story right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that's going to be the highlight of the book for me.
Good.
But writing what we've written so far, I think the thing that will intrigue people the most is why and how did this happen to my mother?
Yeah.
And how did my mother go from being broken and shattered? The reason I'm here is because my mom she made an effort and she reached out basically to God.
Yeah.
And what an inspiration to be able to, she couldn't go, she got to the finish line. To me, when I get to that part of the book, that's probably going to be the best.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good.
The finish line is that my mom, I felt like, in the end, my mom, when I found Jay, it felt like my mom was finally released. These were the two secrets. Tammy, I didn't mention Tammy's last name, Tammy Thompson. I met her 8 years ago. I love you, Tammy. She's my sister. And I've met Jay now. And I love you, Jay. And both of you are the completion of my mom's life.
Wow. That's the best and deepest answer we've had on the quiz so far. So we'll just.
I was gonna say I have no other questions to follow that up.
Beautiful.
That's
okay.
it. But
Ted, again, love you, brother. Thank you for being on the show.
I love you guys too.
I appreciate it so much.
And
we'll when the book comes out, we'll be sure to let everybody know. And but guys, thanks again for listening. Hey, if you got a line you want to drop us a line.
Yes, drop us a line.
Drop us a line.
Feedback at dudesandadspodcast.com.
Feedback at dudesandadspodcast.
Yeah, we're official now.
Andy's been working hard.
I have.
Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. dudesandadspodcast.com for the show notes and all the other good stuff. But until next time,
Grace
and peace.